Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Lighthouse Sessions. I'm excited. I have my friend Yvonne DiVita with me. Yvonne, why don't you introduce yourself? Just tell us, what do you do? What is your superpower?
My superpower is book coaching. So I help people write, publish, and learn how to market their book. And when you talk about superpower, Jeff, the superpower is in my ability to listen to them and read between the lines so that I can help them write the best book that they ever could produce. And I'm about words. So I'm all about, are they using the right word? Is it in the right place in the sentence and all of that kind of thing? So yeah, book coaching and developmental editing and just helping people realize that dream of publishing a book.
I love that. Now, let's talk about my audience is no stranger to books because Jeff rants about books all day long. Um, let's talk about the stories you like to work with people. What are they telling? Why are they telling it? Who is their audience?
Well, generally speaking, I work with coaches. However, a lot of people are coming to me because they have a personal story. So the books are part memoir and part um, education, so that they can teach people something while they learn and read the story of what has happened to this particular person. I have a book about Alzheimer's that is just fantastic, and the stories that she tells about being and taking care of her dad, and a book about photography with a father-son team, and it's a bond, and they want to share their bond with the world and talk about how we have a bond, human to human. It isn't just father to son, but it's person to person, and it's felt in these photographs that they took. And so when people come to me and they have a story, I want that story to be important to the world. I don't want it to be, oh, well, I have a business and this is how I made the business a success. And if everybody does these 5 steps, then their business will be a success too. That is not my kind of book.
I've written a few of those by accident, and it's like, oh God, please, not again.
Yeah, I generally speaking, I'll tell you, people come to me with the outline of what they want to say, and we work very hard on, well, what stories are there that will help the reader really feel what you're telling them, as opposed to just, I tell people all the time, no one wants to read your PowerPoint slides, okay? They want you to give them a little blood. I call it bleeding on the page. And in fact, I'm writing my book called Bleeding on the Nonfiction Page, where I'm trying to teach people how to tell those kind of stories in their nonfiction books.
I love that. And I think, you know, I will let the world judge the person. I don't care about people, but one thing that really resonated with me was when J.K. Rowling came out with Harry Potter, and I saw kids in costumes lined up at bookstores to buy books. I was like, I have no idea who this person is, but I love that somebody got people excited about books.
Yeah, we can go there. We can go there. I mean, I read the Harry Potter books also,
Yeah,
most of them. I don't think I read the last couple of them. And yeah, J.K. Rowling's has her controversies, right?
yeah,
But don't all authors. So
yeah.
to your point, though, how many other than Star Wars, and Star Wars really didn't come out as a series of books. It was movies and
Hmm.
screenplays. We can say Tolkien. So
Yeah,
Tolkien is another one that had a whole different world and created things, but Tolkien was a little bit beyond the kid, right?
yeah.
So Harry Potter was more for kids.
Well, and C.S. Lewis is another one that when you think about epic worlds,
Yeah.
and again, I'm not here to talk about world development, but the passion with which there's Pottermore. There is.
Yeah.
I would argue that she launched a mini cult, like Star Wars, like Lord
Yep.
of the Rings, and it's because people identify with the story.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like if you look at the TED Talks, they try to pull all of the boring, they take away the slide deck with all of the facts. I think nonfiction should try to be a little bit more interesting.
Well, yeah, that's the whole point, is that if you're writing a book and it's meant to teach someone something, you don't have to be like in the ninth grade science class where everything was, here are your test tubes and this is how you do it. That's what we want to hear is what happened when the test tube fell over and it broke and all the stuff was all over the counter. What did your teacher do? And did you all rush out? And was it, this is what we want to know about.
Yeah.
Right?
Nobody wants to hear about the chemistry exam. My kids, for example, they want to hear about the time our school had to get evacuated because my chemistry teacher accidentally made brown fog without turning on the air extractor thing.
Exactly. And so I say to them, look, the people out there that are going to read this book, they're bleeding all over the place because they're trying so hard to achieve something. Yeah. And you have to bleed with them. And so I call it bleeding on the page. And if you're not bleeding on the page, then you aren't showing the emotion. If you aren't showing the emotion, then you're just a talking head or you're just a robot. And we want real people. We want to connect with real people.
Yeah, nobody wants to sit and watch you read a textbook or read your version of a textbook. And it's funny because when people come to me all the time, I think you and I sort of were adjacent in terms of where we work. I'm getting more and more into writing parables because I've been hired to write one too many how-to books. And I was like, oh my God, this is boring to write. I can't imagine somebody reading it. No offense to my clients. But nobody wants the textbook. So I'm inventing a genre, and I don't know if it's mine for sure, but I'm calling it, instead of how to, it's why to.
There you go.
And that I found, I'm going to be honest, I've written dozens of books that nobody gives a crap about because they were very, at the client's request. They were formulaic and dry. Yeah. They wanted to demonstrate their expertise. Therefore, we need 400 pages of checklists and bullet points. Just imagine reading those, and then they come and say, could we redraft this? And I'm like, no, I'm not reading it again. Just no.
Yeah, there's that. But I mean, if you look at like James Clear, if you look at Seth Godin, if you look at his name escapes me right, but if you look at any of those authors and you're talking nonfiction, you're talking how to help people, because that's the whole purpose. You are making a promise that they're going to learn something and it's going to help them in their world, whatever that is. And so the way that they're going to learn it is by connecting with you and your failures and your successes and the stories about them. I had a client a couple years ago, and he was writing a book about executive coaching, his executive coaching practice, so to speak. And we were telling some stories about things that had happened, and one of his colleagues was a very, very good character. So we told his story. And then my author was telling me a story about something that happened to him when he was a child, when he was 10 years old. And he got teary-eyed. And he said, I still remember it, and it still makes me cry. And I said, why is this not in the book?
That is the emotional connection people want, right?
Yeah. And so we put it in the book.
And that's, I think, what I've realized, and I assume you're miles ahead of me on this, but I used to write here, here's how to, but nobody cares about how to until they care about why. And it's some of my authors get a little nervous because now I'm making them share my business parables. There is the genre of, here's what working, they're the book version of a business card. It's walking step by step. But what I focus on is the emotional journey somebody went through. Exactly. And we bring in all of the doubt and the fear. And, my clients get nervous when we share the failures because they think, oh, got to be perfect. And I'm driven by a little fact I heard somewhere that Superman, when he was first created, was completely invincible, and nobody found him relatable until Krypton was made as his weakness.
Yes, yes. And so that's exactly why if we now segue, when you're writing a novel, the good guy isn't all good and the bad guy isn't all bad. You have to make them human, and all humans have good and bad in them. And so you have to use that and understand how to bring that out in the story. And I mean, in the books that we've just talked about, they do it so well. They show that the protagonist has evil, or not evil necessarily, but there are things that are not 100% perfect, right? And then the bad guys, they love dogs or something, right? And so you have to give them the kind of characters have to be believable and cannot be believable if they don't have the same foibles as actual human beings. And I mean, we see this being played out in the world stage right now, where we're just assuming that someone is bad because they don't think like we do. And that's just not the way it is, right?
So the world is not good and evil. It's
right. It's a combination, and it's today I'm bad and tomorrow I'm not. And something I do that I think is perfectly fine, someone else doesn't think is perfectly fine. But in the end, when you're writing a book, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, it involves people. Unless it's some scientific journal, or unless it's some other kind of educational book, 99% of the time it involves people. It's about and for people, and therefore there has to be blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah, unless you're writing the chemistry how-to or something, a safety protocol. But please, if you're writing those, don't ask me to help, and I'll let Yvonne decide if she wants them.
No, I don't do those either.
It's I know
some kind of story, and they'll be like, "What? This doesn't go here."
Yeah, I know people who write like technical manuals, and I'm like, "Oh God, no, please."
No. Aren't those funny though? Those are funny.
I do find them amusing. I will flip through them, but I would not want to write them.
No, and it's just anyways. But when I do books, when someone comes to me and they have a wonderful story, and we talk about the story, and then I tell them how I can help them put that story together and create an actual book, and then we talk about, well, who's going to read the book. And that is a big thing, right? Well, I'm not writing a book because nobody's going to read my book because 25 other people wrote one just like it. And I'm like, oh, well, that's good. That is actually good news, because that means there's a market for this book. Number one. And number two, please go to the library. Please go to the library and see how many different authors there are who wrote the same kind of book. People do not just read one author about a subject. They want variety. So they're going to read your book if we put it together and do it right.
I love that. And I think that's, the piece, and this is where I'm going to interpret, but when you put your blood on the page, there's no such thing as a competitive author, because you've told your story.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I mean, I read a book. I don't necessarily remember, I love Bob Berg and John David Mann. I love The Go-Giver. I know there's 5 laws of stratospheric success. I hate saying the phrase because my brain drops one of the S's somewhere. But if you ask me pop quiz, what are the 5 laws? I don't know. But the story, and that's the thing. I love stories. It follows somebody who applied networking to their business. They learned the Go-Giver way and they became really good at it. It's a story that adds to the learning. But again, it's not a textbook about networking. There's others who've written textbooks about networking.
It's really, to your point, it's really about how are you helping someone achieve something that they need. And they don't necessarily resonate with someone else.
Yeah.
Maybe your story is the story that really speaks to them because it hits home and they've read other books about it and they just didn't do anything. But now your story is going to be the one that they say, finally, someone gets me. Isn't that it, Jeff? Someone gets me. I'm
Yeah.
reading this book and it's like, you get me.
Yep. I had somebody say, I feel heard for the first time ever.
Yeah.
And one actually said, how did you know my story? And I'm like, because it was my story.
See? Yeah.
So, everybody's trying, and, this is my little rant about marketing. Everybody wants to be clever and try to appeal to everyone. Why not be, you mentioned the book, who's reading this? I don't care about who's not reading it. I don't want to send it to a bunch of critics and get acclaim. I want to know if I write a book and I send it to one person, and literally, Yvonne, I did this. I wrote it, published it, sent it to one person, and then I took it offline because he literally cried because I wrote it for him and it changed his life. And I was like, that's what a good book should be.
Yeah. Yeah.
And honestly, I think, we've gotten lazy with day-to-day writing. Back in the day, you expressed all of your great emotions like love or patriotism or whatever in, the long form love letter.
Yeah. And now
we're do that.
We're trying. Well, and I think that we see this so much in the social media and how social media is written. But so on LinkedIn, there's a gentleman I'm connected to called James McCabe, and he writes the most amazing LinkedIn posts. He does not care that it isn't the form everyone else wants. It's not one sentence at a time. It's actual paragraphs.
Yeah.
And it actually contains important information about how to be a good storyteller. Yeah. And I love it. And I love reading his content. And people will say, but no one reads that. And I'm like, well, who's no one? Introduce me to this no one person. Because guess what? People are reading it. If you talk to SEO experts, okay, they will tell you that long form content on your website is what Google is looking for. So there are places for short form and there are places to be yourself and tell the story you want to tell and not be hindered by, oh my God, how many characters do I have? Right? To your point, and I think back in the day when I was in 7th grade, I would go to the library and I would get like 10 books out, and I would read 10 books in 2 weeks, and then I would write book reviews on every single one of them. And like other kids in the class hated me, but the teacher loved me, and it was just what I did. And
that was me in grade 5, just FYI.
and I that's how I learned. Yeah. You see, that's how I learned the value of words and where they go and how we use them. And I do that with my authors, and I constantly will say to them, this word is not the right word. Let's find a better one. Or I will say, this sentence belongs at the end. You put it in the middle, but it is the most important part of this paragraph. We're putting it at the end because people remember things they read at the end, right? They don't remember what was in the middle, but there at the end, it's right there in front of their face. So we rearrange things, and we do that because we want to make sure that the reader not only understands and gets the message, but that they feel it. Yeah. That there's some kind of feeling that comes through, and that they understand a real person wrote this book. And yes, by the way, because we live in this modern age, you can connect with the author because the author has a website and the author has a LinkedIn or Facebook page and welcomes people to connect. I mean, how cool is that?
It's an amazing time. When I was a kid, I was go to the library, and books were my favorite friends. I had actual human friends, but if they came between me and the book, guess who won? It's like, I'm reading, leave me be. But it took me to places, the magic of the word. And, the fastest way to end a conversation with me is, oh, I don't read.
Oh yeah,
And
like
and for the record, I will handle if you say I listen on Audible, I get it. But if people aren't interested in learning, I don't need to have a conversation because
yeah.
I'm curious about the world.
Right, right, exactly. It's a kind of, it's, for me, it's kind of like a nice blanket, a nice warm blanket. I used to read. We had a house where halfway up the stairs there was a window and there was a window seat, and I would sit on the window seat and I would read books. And um, there was a big old, I believe it was an elm tree out the window. It was in the neighbor's yard, but I could see it out the window, and I would talk to the tree because I love this tree, and I would talk to the tree about the book, and
Yeah,
I would say, someday I'm going to write a book like this, and the tree would say, I bet you will.
I love it. Just between you and me and the audience, I used to hide under my bed with a flashlight because then nobody could find me. And I had it all set up. I built a little cave and I had
Yeah,
blankets so the light wouldn't escape. And
yeah. See, that's what we did. That's what we did then, and it's because books and words were so they just spoke to us, right?
yeah,
I didn't have a happy home life. It was not pleasant. So I buried myself in books.
yeah.
And like you, my friends knew that if I was reading, I was reading. The only thing that could come between me and my book was my dog, and that was
Oh,
okay.
there you go. I love it. Well, I had a horse and I'd take my book out and hang out with my horse and read in the pasture. So
Yeah. I mean, the memories of doing those things. And that's what I want to bring, because everybody has those stories. Everybody, doesn't matter how old they can be. My age, I think I'm older than you, but they can be your age, or they can be 20 years old. They have those stories of what something that they did, or some experience that touched them, that meant something to them, whether it was something that made them cry, or whether it was something that made them laugh, or whether it was something that made them feel really good.
yeah.
These are the stories that belong in the books, and that's why I'm so passionate when I work with my authors, that even though they come to me and tell me this great story they want to write, I want to know the background of the story. I want to know. So, one of my authors wrote a book about leadership, and one particular part of it, she was telling about how she was passed over for a promotion, and she deserved that promotion, and she was not happy about being passed over. And I wrote back to her and said, you didn't tell me how you really felt. I want to know, how did you feel? Were you angry? Did you
Yeah.
slam the door? Did you push the chair over? What did you do? Because
Yeah.
you told me you didn't get this promotion. There had to be some further details that you're leaving out. So we told the whole story of how she felt and how that promotion should have been hers. And that's what I do. I don't let my authors get off just telling me what happened. I'm like, no, I want to know what the background was. Was it raining? Who was there? What did you do? Who said what?
Well, it's funny. It should feel like a conversation between friends, because a good friend will say, "And then what?
Yeah,
Oh my God, that sounds terrible. How did you react?
yep,
Where did it stand? What's going on?" And I
yep.
think you don't want to fill in every gap, but you want it
Oh,
easy for the reader.
right.
And I think that's why you and I get along so well, is we talk a lot about the reader before
Yeah.
the book even matters. Because if the reader, I this is just my weird world. I will spend a day writing the character traits of the reader. And then once I've figured out exactly, what pain do they have? What are they afraid of? How can I help them? Then I'll write the story. But people always want to skip that step. And I'm like, I can write a book that you and I are proud of, or I can give you a piece of garbage that you're going to
Yeah.
hate me for.
Yeah. So I tell people all the time, yeah, I serve the author, but my allegiance is to the reader. And I will tell the author all the time, the reader is not going to understand this paragraph.
Yeah.
And they'll say, well, like I had a psychiatrist. Well, psychiatrists know what that means. And I'm like, you didn't write this for psychiatrists. We're writing this for lay people. They're not going to know what that means. We
Yeah,
have to explain it. And even if some people do know what it means, the people who don't, they'll be so grateful.
exactly.
The people who do know, they read it and they go on. But the people who don't will be just so thrilled, that you explained it to them. So yeah, it's the reader is, because even the book that you wrote and you sent to the person and then you took down was for somebody. You do not write a book just for yourself. If you do, I am probably not the person that you want to work with, because I like books that are going to change the world.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because one of the weird things I do, whenever I learn something, I write a book about it for myself.
Oh.
And what I do is, why is this important? And I'm getting really good at it because I have 2 kids, and I'm like, oh my God, I want to give them some actual fatherly wisdom when they leave home. But when I'm figuring something out, I write a book about what I'm figuring out. So, I used to do it after the fact, but then it wasn't real. But now I'll have the, oh my God, I'm going to throw my keyboard moment, and I walk through it. And those books get published, but not promoted.
Wow.
And then I write the actual, okay, how would this change the world? Now, spoiler alert, each of my little books will never change the world. But when I bring 10 of them together, it's me understanding the chunks. But for the record, those books don't need any coaching because it's me figuring shit out.
Well, it's also, excuse me, when you say they won't change the world, if they change one person's life, they've changed the world, because the butterfly effect is real. Everything we do affects the people around us. So every story and every book is there to change the world in some way, and it should be a good way, right?
Yep.
And so when I work with my authors and we talk about the audience, well, who's the audience? To your point, and all authors do this, right? I'm sure they come and everybody should read my book. It's and I say, well, all 7 billion people on the planet are not going to read your book. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the group of people who might read your book, and then we get that group of people, and I say, okay, within that group of people, who are the people whose the problem is going to solve the most? And then we continue doing that until we get to your point. That group, it can be a small group of 100 people. Yeah. And if this book is for those 100 people, well, guess what? They will share it with all the other people.
Yeah, they'll find the other 99 like them. Right. And that's... So between you and me, I love to build a community around a book because, again, I'm not writing a book to scratch an itch or just to say, I've got I'm an award-winning author. Don't care. It's like, now it's like, okay, I want to be an impact. Maybe there's an impact award. I don't know, but I want to be the author who has an impact. And I think that's the kind of people you want to hang out with. And for what it's worth, I remember you and I have had conversations before. You're very much aligned with the people I hang out with because we're not writing a book. We're not looking for the glory behind our name. We're looking for elevating another human and saying, here, breathe easy because of this.
Right. If you're come to me and you're writing the book because it's the next big thing to pizza, I'm all for that, but I'm not your gal.
Yeah.
Because I don't think writing a book for that reason is why anyone should write a book. Yeah. The book should be written because there is a problem to solve. So the book that is going to be coming out this summer from us is a daughter and talking about how she tried to fix her father who had Alzheimer's. And the book is about her journey, caring for him. And it's full of all the things that she did and all the things that she tried and all the books that she read and the people that she met and talked to. And it's just a wonderful, fabulous, funny, and sad story. And it's written because other people are experiencing the same thing, and they don't have the words right to talk about it. We all know someone who's had or been touched by this disease, and so this book is just an inside look into the power of the father-daughter bond and what it means, over and above any disease.
And, something like that could be written again. We could write the textbook on here's how to,
Right.
But honestly, and this is something I'm recognizing, and we can have another episode on this. We don't all learn by reading and writing. Some of us do, but we don't all. But we can all relate to the heartbreak, the sadness, the aloneness, the loneliness, and then the moment of peace. Hopefully peace, when people realize they're not alone. Diseases like Alzheimer's, you don't fix, you don't cure. It's just a question of how do we all get through this together. And that's so much like life. Life is not clean. It's not, if life was that sterile, we'd be all, we'd be in the Matrix and it would be very boring.
Yeah, I know, something like that. And it is a similar to the way that we live our life, right? And that's why when you have a book, whether it's this book about the father-daughter bond, and it's called Finding Our Way Through Alzheimer's, One Step at a Time, whether it's about something like that, or whether it's about how you started your business and became successful with it, within that realm, number one, there's no such thing as an overnight success. Yep. And anyone who tells you that is lying to you.
I tried to sell you something.
Right. Number two, within that realm of this journey you went on to have this idea, and now you have this successful business, there's a whole lot of chaos in there. Yeah. Right? And that's what we want. And that's why it's part of life. We do not, even though there are still people who say you do, we do not separate work from business. There's no such thing as work-life balance. Everything we do is everything we do. Yeah. And so, because it's life, because it's people taking care of whatever needs taking care of. Yeah. And sometimes I need to hear your story about that, because I'm having that same experience, but I don't know how to talk about it.
Yeah. And I think that's the beautiful thing about a good book, is you can give somebody the words or the questions or the curiosity to find the help they needed.
Yeah, definitely.
And for the record, it's probably not in the self-help aisle at your local bookstore, but everybody's looking for that magic bullet. Now I'm going to transition, because I'm guessing working with you, you're not an easy button. There's no magic bullet, no silver bullet. So what does working with Yvonne look like? And then how can people connect with you to figure out if you're the person to guide them on the next stage of their journey?
So working with me means having meetings twice a month. And I work with my authors on the first word all the way to the last word. We work chapter by chapter by chapter. And some chapters take 3 or 4 months to finish, because we go back and forth on them to make them the way that they should be. Other chapters are very easy and they get done quickly. I do the developmental editing. I do the book coaching, because there is always a point during the process, usually it's close to the end, where the author's ready to jump off of a cliff, because it's like,
or their ghostwriter is ready to throw them off, just to be clear.
Well, the book has taken up so much of their time, and now it's going to be it's going to be born, right? And
Yeah.
so I'm coaching them all through this process and helping them develop this and write this story that they need to tell. And I like to say, Jeff, by the way, I like to say that we don't story tell. We create story ballet, and we create story craft. And it isn't a matter of telling, because that's just a conversation between two people. I want you to feel what's going on.
Yeah.
So I want the story to be something more than just something that I'm telling or the author is telling. And so we work on that, and the words and the font choices. And then my husband does the cover design and the interior layout. And we get the book on Amazon. We help them contact beta readers. So we have beta readers. We work with them on teaching them how to market the book. So, they need to get a website, and what social channels should they be on, and how should they be on those social channels. And so, when you work with me at Master Book Builder, we're committed to you in the whole project. It's generally a 9 to 12 month. It can go sometimes over 12 months. And we work through that with the author if it does. But in the end, what we produce is a book that the author can be proud of, and they can stand on the shelf next to any book produced by any traditional publishing house, because we have a standard that we adhere to, and it has to meet the same standards that are put out by traditional. So our books are indie published. The author is the publisher. We help them create their logo. We help them get their ISBNs and all of the things that they need to make sure that the book is going to be produced properly and look proper, right? So I'll tell you a short story, Jeff. Years and years ago, I was at a conference, and I was the moderator of a panel about books, and there was someone from the traditional publishing world, someone from the indie publishing world, and there was a PR marketing person there. And I said, this was right after it got going. It was only a few minutes in, where we were talking about, well, should you go with a traditional or should you indie publish, self-publish? And I said to the audience, okay, about 200 people in the audience, I said, I want you to raise your hand if you ever looked to see who the publisher was before you bought a book. Nobody's hand went up, because nobody looks to see. If it's a quality product, it's a quality product.
Yeah.
And that's what we put out. We put out quality products, and we're very committed to making sure the author is happy with it, and that they understand how to put it in front of the people that it's meant for.
You are one of my people, clearly, because when I go to a bookstore and I see a book that makes me go, wow, I open it and I take a picture of the publisher, because I want to do, I just saw one, I can't remember what it was. It was like an old version of I think it was Dracula or something, but it was just like, it was a piece of art on the shelf, and it was in a clearance bin, and I'm like, oh my God. And so I take pictures when I see a book that it's like, oh, I want to touch that, and it had like red velvet inside, and I'm like, this was an experience.
Yeah. See, that's interesting. I do look at, when I have books that I go to thrift stores, and I go to places where I pick up books for $2 or $3. Yeah. And I often look to see who the publisher is. And I do that because the same thing, the book looks good. The book looks really great.
But most of the time it's on your shelf and you're like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah. And but you and I are in the business. So we're kind of unique, right? The average reader doesn't do that. The average reader looks at the cover. If they like the cover, they want to open the book. They may turn it over and look at the back cover to read the blurb, which they can do on Amazon now. Yeah. And then they're going to open it up. They're going to look at it. They might read some. If they get that far, they're probably going to buy the book. Yeah.
So they're not checking out the spine and
right.
Sorry, I'm a little bit craft oriented. I get kind of nerdy. But for what it's worth, and this is context I would say is very valuable, I care deeply about what's between the covers.
Mhm.
And that's my sweet spot. That's where I hang out. I don't care about anything. Literally, I don't even care about the cover.
Mm.
I love handing that stuff off to somebody else. And it is funny because my people are like, oh, could you help us with social media? No.
No,
It's just,
no.
again, it's fascinating when people go, but you're good at the book. I know. Don't
Yeah,
ask me,
yeah.
do you want me to come change your oil while I'm at it?
Yeah, yeah. I tell people all the time that I am not a bookstore. I am not going to sell your book. I
Yeah.
am not a book marketer. I am not going to market your book. However, I will tell you what you need to do. I will give you an idea of how to do it. So, Jeff, I have an ebook I created last year, and it's called How to Market Your Book Like a Rock Star, the Taylor Swift Model of Book Marketing. And it literally talks about how Taylor Swift and her Swifties took over the world, and how, by the way, Mr. Author, you can do the same thing, and here's how. And
A
it
little
has
rant.
nothing to do with social, not nothing, but very
Yeah.
little to do with social media. It has to do with making relationships with your readers.
Yeah. Anybody who doesn't respect Taylor Swift as a business person doesn't need to talk to me, because I would pay anything to sit and talk and just listen to her strategy, because she's got, like, her team loves her,
Yeah.
her audience loves her. I mean, she's got some loyalty. If somebody actually went after Taylor Swift publicly, I'd hate to see what her fans would do.
Oh, yeah.
And tell me that's not the goal of every business. Raving loyal fans.
Right, right. And how did she do it? So in the book I outline, here are the things that she did, and here's how you can do it. And by the way, it might involve going to the local coffee shop and inviting people to come in and talk to you about your book.
Yep.
I know that you're an introvert and you just want to stay in your office and write another book, but you can't do that.
Yep.
This is not 1919. This is 2025, and people want to connect with you. And if you connect with them, and if you learn the names of 10 people who like your books, oh boy. And then you mention them by name in your
Yep.
social media, they are going to jump off a cliff for you.
Yep. I love it. Now, you and I are going to have part 2, part 3. This is going to be a big series, but how can people connect with you? And then I unfortunately have to wrap and send you back to your brilliance.
Oh, yes. Well, I would love people to connect with me on LinkedIn. So it's just my name, Yvonne DiVita. And you can go to our website, masterbookbuilders.com. And we chose that title, Jeff, on purpose, because we feel a connection to the kinds of books that were done in the 15 and 1600s, where they spent time putting the book together, right?
Yeah.
Where it was done by hand. It wasn't done by machine. So masterbookbuilders.com.
I love it. Well, Yvonne, and we better shout out to Janine Boland, because
Yes.
she did introduce us. Hi, Janine.
Hi, Janine.
Thank you for hanging out with me and sharing your amazing insights.
Thank you. This was fun.